Hey, welcome to the men's room, the hangout where dads, husbands, and everyday guys level up. I'm Chad Henderson, twin dad, husband, lifelong learner. Travel with me as I open up the real conversations that push me to become a better dad, husband, and friend. Ready? Let's dive in. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Men's Room. I've got a special guest with me here today, Dr. Keith Edwards. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chad. I'm really excited to be here. Love the show. Love the guests that you have and how they're so insightful and also not perfect in the midst of doing it themselves and the authenticity. And so I'm really
Absolutely.
excited to be able to have this conversation with you and see if we can be helpful today.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Keith. Well, the podcast at this point still exists because of your helping keep me motivated and saying like, "Hey, Chad, this you got to keep trying with this." So
Yeah.
it's been on my mind to bring you because you have helped shape me probably in more ways than you even realize. Your name might come up more at therapy than even I sometimes expect. I'm like, why do I talk about Keith so much for how few times I get to talk to him? But you and I have had kind of a longer relationship. When I was an undergrad at Hamlin University, I was an RA there. And I remember for the first time when you came to campus, and you're an alum, a
Mhm.
former Piper yourself, and you had come to campus and spoken to the RAs and to the Res Life team. So that was my first exposure at some of your work with putting on my man face and understanding masculinity. That was my real introduction.
Okay.
You
I don't
remember that?
remember that at all. Not at all. But I believe
No.
you. I believe you.
Yes. Yeah, so that was the first time that it was kind of exposed to me. And that's the first time I remember Patty Klein being like, hey, you should maybe read some of this stuff. Like, this might be good
Mm,
for you. And I didn't
mhm.
understand it at the time. But then you were also at McAllister at the time, where my future wife was an
Mhm.
RA herself. So I had, I was seeing what you were doing over there. Then I get to St. Thomas, and in grad school, you actually teach my DEI class.
Mhm.
And boy, I cringe thinking back to some of the things that I said in
Yeah.
that class. But so we've had a long relationship. I've looked up to you for a long time. You've been a mentor since then. And so, yeah, I just
You're
wanted to
forgetting
invite you
some
all.
some Sunday morning meaning of life breakfasts,
Yes,
some
100%.
fantasy football talk, all sorts of different things. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
Like definitely over the years have become my friend as well. I look up to you so much. But I was like, I gotta bring him on and we'll talk a little bit about kind of everything. But first of all, you're a person who I kind of identify as, and I say this carefully,
Okay.
but as somebody who's like kind of living the dream. And I recently heard you on another podcast where you talked about how your dream had changed from what you thought maybe it was going to be in a career in student affairs. And now I don't even know how to explain, like coach, speaker,
Yeah.
author. What do you think of that if I say Keith Edwards is living the dream?
It sounds great. I still remember those Nick Bakay Sports Center commercials about living the dream, and I use that language all the time. Um, I don't feel like I'm living the dream. That sounds great though. I had aspired to it. I
Yeah.
am very fortunate. I am very privileged. And I've worked really hard and intentionally to craft, particularly a professional life that aligns with my personal life. Um, so as you mentioned, how I say is I'm a speaker, author, and coach, and I work to empower better tomorrows for us all through leadership, learning, and equity. And I particularly work with higher education leaders.
Beautiful.
That's the short version. You can go to my website, which is keithedwards.com, and find out a lot more. I was at McAllister. I worked in higher ed for a number of years, was at McAllister as the director of campus life for 8 years. Taught that equity and inclusion course at St. Thomas for 8 years. 10 and a half years ago, I left that role. I said I graduated from McAllister College. And for 10 and a half years, I've been doing my own thing. So working for myself, working independently. That's, I think, maybe part of the living the dream. I do love the freedom and flexibility. I love the ability to focus on where my curiosity takes me. What I thought I would be doing 10 years ago is not what I'm doing now. And I love that it has been emergent along the way. Um, but I am, recording this from my home in my slippers, so that's pretty great.
Nice
Um,
warm slippers on a
yeah,
cold Minnesota day.
yeah, and, I was just, reflecting yesterday, since I do work from home, which has so many benefits, and I love it. Some people don't, but I love it. Um, we were reflecting on our kitchen remodel that we did 5 years ago, and if I would have just thought about it as the break room, we could have made that a business expense, so that was a huge miss. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really did. You really did miss out
Yeah.
on that. No,
Let
that's
me just say a little
beautiful.
bit more about that because you brought it up. I think, my leaving McAllister was kind of, the sort of execution of a big shift. I have a PhD in higher education administration. I have a master's. I was a super RA like you were at Hamlin as an undergrad.
Mhm.
Um, and for 20 years, I did that. And I thought I wanted to be a dean of students and a vice president for student affairs. And I was very much on that track, um, because people who I really admired and looked up to saw that in me, and it was a huge compliment.
Yeah.
And it took some real provocation and some really people getting in my face to help me realize that while that's a great dream, it wasn't mine.
Yeah.
It's a great path, and there's many people on it, and I work with many of them and help support them, but it wasn't my path, and it took me a while to realize that. And then, of course, it evokes the question, well, if that's not it, what is my path?
Yeah, like,
And what
what
do
the
I
hell
want
am I
that
gonna
to
be doing?
be?
Because this
Yeah.
plan was working out on
It was
track
going
for
really
what.
well. It was.
Yeah.
I was fortunate that I had been doing some side work, doing some speaking, mostly speaking around sexual violence prevention, and so I had an alternative path. But when I was ready to leave McAllister, I thought about, do I wanna go to Hamlin? Do I wanna go to the University of Minnesota? Do I wanna go to Kansas and be a dean of students? And I realized that's different school colors, same problems.
Oh, yeah.
And I wanted to do something different. And I was meditating, which is a huge part of that transition. I was involved in coaching, which is a huge part of that transition. I was reading a lot of positive psychology about
Mhm.
what really makes people happy. And you got to make enough money, but beyond that, more money doesn't make people more happy.
Yeah.
It's things like short commutes. And my daughters were 2 and 4 at the time, and I was missing a lot of their life for weekend-long student government retreats and 3
Yeah.
nights a week being on campus for a speaker, an event, and a crisis. Um, I found myself in this room, which used to be the nursery, holding a baby and trying to get through my emails at the same time, and just thinking, "This isn't it. This
Yeah.
is not what I wanna be doing." And I live a life now where I'm leaving work at 4:30 today because my boss will let me to go to my daughter's basketball game. And that's super important to me, and I love it. And the flexibility and allow me to be present for what really matters to them has been really, really great. They're now 15 and 13, so, I've got another 5 years of them being in high school, and sports is all-consuming for them. Um, and then we'll see what happens on the other side of that, when things make another shift as they tend to do. I remember coming home and changing diapers and thinking, "Well, this is my life now."
Yeah.
And then 4 years later, after 2 kids, changing my last one and being like, "Oh, that's it? Like, we're done?"
Yeah. Yeah,
And if
that's real.
you can be a little misty-eyed at changing your last diaper, imagine about
Mhm.
all the other life transitions that come along the way.
Yeah, and if you're not stopping and paying attention, they just sort of whiz by you
That's right.
without you stopping, right? Like, I'm very cognizant of the fact that my 2 10-year-olds, like, I got one that probably doesn't really believe in all this Christmas stuff anymore and all these
Yeah.
miracles, right? And I
Yep.
got one that's still like, "Why would anybody say that
Yeah.
Santa's not real?" And so I told Keelan last night, I'm like, my goal is just to embrace what is probably the last year of the magic part. Not that
Yeah.
we won't create something new, not that it doesn't evolve, but, like, it's probably the last moment of holding on to that, like,
Yeah.
they believe the elves are, like, stealing cookies and, like, causing mayhem in the house, and it's just, like, this beautiful moment. You
Yeah.
shared a video with me of the actor. I'm terrible at actor names, of the Better Call Saul actor, and he's talking
Oh,
about, like, "I'm just jealous and envious of any dad or parent who still has little kids at home
yeah.
because they still think you're a hero."
Yeah.
Such a
That's
beautiful video, like, got
yeah,
me thinking.
Bob Odenkirk, who's on Better Call
Yes.
Saul,
Thank
well,
you.
also was a writer on Saturday Night Live,
Yes.
on Mike Birbiglia's podcast. One of the things Mike Birbiglia asks all the comedians who come on is, "Who are you jealous of?" And he's really just trying to start some shit,
Just
right? Just
yeah,
start
yeah, absolutely, yeah,
famous
just a good
comedians,
question.
uh, and Bob Odenkirk's answer, just like that, "Who are you jealous of?" Anyone who still has small kids at home.
Oh, such a
And
beautiful
I was just
answer.
like, "Oh," because I remember having small kids, it's so much work. It is so much hard work. It is so much lifting and carrying and crying and noodling and eat your food. Like, it is so much, like, physical labor, late nights, early mornings, um, but I miss it. And it was a
Yeah.
great reminder that I miss it. And his point was, when I had little kids, I never woke up in the middle of the night and thought, "What is my purpose? What am I doing? Is this important?" I got up and I put away all the toys between here and the door. Like,
Yeah,
that was
like,
my
I
purpose,
knew. I
right?
always knew what I
And
was supposed to do when I was dad, is what he
yeah,
was getting at,
and
yeah.
now his kids are gone and in college and off doing their own things, and you see that like, "Well, now what is my purpose? Why am I here? What am I doing?" I remember my it's my sister and I, my parents are divorced, my dad's remarried and has 3 younger kids. And I remember being in my probably 30, and my youngest brother was 6 at the time, and visiting them, and my dad saying something to my youngest brother who was 6, and him giving some sort of snotty answer back. And I thought, based on my childhood experience, "Oh, no, dad is gonna lose it.
Yeah.
This kinda stuff does not go well." And my dad just kinda chuckled and rolled his eyes, and I remember just being, like, initially angry, like, "This is not fair. I got a very different dad than you're getting. This isn't fair. I would have gotten yelled at. This isn't fair. This isn't fair." And a couple hours later, I remember not being angry, just being curious, and I said to my dad, like, "Can you tell me about that? Because if I would have done that, I feel like you would have been angry, and it would have been really difficult, but you really handled that a different way." And he said, "Son, it's the last 6-year-old I'm ever gonna have, and I'm just really trying to enjoy it." And I
Yeah.
just thought, "Great!" Like, I'm so glad you're a different dad to him than you were to me, and of course, on your 5th kid, you're better at it than your 1st, right? That's how
Sure.
learning works, and
Sure.
I can be resentful of that, or I can be, empathetic, right? That he didn't know what he was doing when he was raising me, right?
Yeah.
Nobody does when you have that 1st kid, and he's learned a lot over time, and I just thought that was such a great perspective, and I think about that all the time with my kids. This is the last 13-year-old I'm ever gonna have. I
Yeah.
How do I enjoy it? It's the last, particularly when it's hard, right? When my 15-year-old is full of all the emotions at the same time, and
Yeah.
it's really hard to try and navigate that, just go, you know, I'll miss this, and I see that all the time.
Yeah.
I'm going to 8 basketball games this week, right? So basketball is between
Basketball
the
is your
C team,
life.
the JV, and the varsity, and multiple games and all the things, and they're not great, and there's a lot of losing. It's very hard. But every time I see someone on Facebook say, "Oh, so many hockey games and it smells and all the shuttling, it's so hard." Every time you see that, there's another parent in the comments going, "I know what you mean.
I
I
know what
miss
you mean.
it so much."
Yeah.
And so
Yeah,
I'm
it's
just
so
trying to, like,
hard.
they lost 67-29, and I was
Mm.
just like, "I will miss this."
I will miss watching you
Yeah.
play, right? Like,
Yep.
trying to focus on the right things because 'cause I'm not always programmed. Like, I wanna say, like, "Hey, I wish you woulda hustled more on
Yeah,
this
yeah,
play," or, "Hey, you wanna make sure you get on the outside there," or whatever, and what I have to remember on our way to the car or on the drive home is like, "Boy, I love watching you get to play,"
yeah,
and that's what I try in my
yeah.
best moments to channel
Well, we have
is
this great reminder in our family right now. My 15-year-old tore her ACL playing soccer in July,
yeah.
and so she didn't get to play high school soccer. She didn't get to play high school basketball. She's managing, so I'm still going to varsity games that no kid of mine is playing in. That's
Yeah,
where we're at, because 'cause
yeah.
I've been with those same girls for, 8 years now. I've watched all of them cry, I watched all of them get hurt, I've watched, so I'm invested.
Yes.
But she would do anything to be out there and lose by 40 points with her friends.
Yeah, and get
That
to
like,
play.
that would be the best. And
Yes.
so it's a great reminder of what you can lose and what you would give up, and, I'll never take for granted picking her up from practice exhausted, sweaty, smelly. I'll never take that for granted again.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
yeah,
There's also, I've talked about this a couple times. We've got this situation where the kids are in the dome. There's 8 different fields we're
yeah,
practicing, right? And what's beautiful about it is like I've got my 4th graders playing on, their 4th grade team. But as you walk around, it might be like some kindergartners, and then there might be a high school team, and then you'll come around in some middle schoolers. And I get to see as I walk literal laps,
yeah,
parents at all these different stages. And it also is a friendly reminder to myself, like the 1st grade team, there's a girl she's doing handstands, right? And I remember distinctly Ella being the kindergartner doing handstands and me being like, Ella, like pay attention. Like, we paid 75 bucks for this soccer class.
yeah,
But as you get a little older, I think there's a wisdom that you can look at it and go like, nah, like don't stop them. Just like whatever. Like, just enjoy the moment, get the picture of him doing the handstand. There's almost like a little bit of a parental wisdom with the
yeah,
older kids that I can almost see those parents looking at me and being like, "Hey, just enjoy it," like
yeah.
just have fun with the handstand or whatever. Um, so that's a beautiful reminder as you have 2 almost high school girls here.
Yeah, yeah. I have a very distinct memory a couple of years ago watching my oldest play high school on Friday night and watching the sunset, right, in a September game, and then getting up super early the next morning and going to those fields at Blaine at the
Yeah?
sports complex where there's like 65 fields and watching the sun rise. And there's so many reasons to complain. It's early, it's cold, it's all of this, but I took a picture of the sun rising over the fields and watching her play, and I remember posting, from sunset to sunrise, this is what we're doing. And just really enjoying that morning and being with the other families and connecting with them. And, someone brought donuts and was sharing them and that community there. And the other thing that happened that day that I wasn't aware of, which I found out later, is that Carl Anthony Towns had been traded to the New York Knicks the night before.
Oh,
And he
okay.
showed up that morning at those soccer fields in Blaine because John Krasinski, who's a sports reporter in the Twin Cities, had a daughter playing that day. And
Oh,
Carl promised, "I'll come see your daughter play." And because he was leaving for New York the next day, having his whole life turned upside down, Carl Anthony Towns showed up to watch a 4th grade girl play
yeah.
soccer because he made a promise.
Yeah,
And
and
so
I
he was
remember that
2
story
fields
deeply.
away. I had no idea, no clue. I was talking about how could they trade, and it was just like, it's such a great every time I see that picture of that sunrise, I remember the night before, I remember that, I remember Karl Anthony Towns keeping a promise he didn't need to keep. No one knew. No, even people who knew would have been like, of course, you've got so much going on. You mean your whole life has just been thrown
Of
into
course,
chaos."
you can't make it to my 4th graders game. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
And I
it wasn't
remember
it
reading
wasn't a
that story.
championship game. It was just like a random Saturday.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. I remember he found out and he was like shooting hoops in the middle of the night
Yeah.
when he found out because he was really sad that he was going to leave. It was an impactful thing. So it's not like, yeah, that's a deep story. That's cool. And I think that speaks as I grow up and, as I continue to grow up now that I'm hitting my 40s
Yeah.
of the ways in which like we learn lessons about showing up for people and showing up when we say we will and the importance of just showing up when you're a person that like has that you have that meaning behind being present, realizing that and still being the person you say you will. That's a cool moment.
Yeah. Yeah, for
That's a
sure.
cool moment. Well, I talk about you in therapy all the time. Why do I talk about you in therapy all the time? Right? Like I've dropped that on you a couple times.
I would love to hear how this goes. Yeah, tell me
So I
about it.
think I think there's a lot with the men's identity stuff that we've talked about all of the years. You introduced me to all of those topics of masculinity. I hadn't really considered those before. And so I remember just being asked questions about like, well, why do you like the things that you like? And me having to challenge myself and be like, well, because I just like them. And then realizing like, no, you were exposed to those for a reason. Like society helps shape who we are. And I think I first understood that in terms of men's identity and what it
Mhm,
means to be a man. I remember even, we had been adjusting more to like friendship by that point.
mhm,
But I remember when Varsity Blues, you and I had talked about
mhm.
the TV show. No, not Varsity Blues, the
Friday
other
Night
one, Friday
Lights.
Night Lights.
Yeah, yeah.
Friday Night Lights. I always do that. Friday Night Lights. And I remember watching it, and like there is a lot of stuff in there about what it means to be a man and growing up as a boy and football in
Yeah.
the South and all of this toxic masculinity stuff. And I remember mentioning it to you, and you had surprised me because I thought like Keith probably won't even like this show, and you were like, "Oh my gosh,
My
I love
all-time
it."
favorite.
Can you tell me about that? Why? Why is that show your favorite?
Well, my 15-year-old just watched it, with
Oh,
our French exchange student who was here this fall, and they watched every single episode before she left. Um, I love it. So here's my Friday Night Light spiel. It's about high school football in Texas, but it's not about high school football. It's about community and belonging and who belongs and who doesn't, and how we do that. And who
yeah,
belongs on the team and who doesn't, who belongs in the town and who doesn't, who feels connected and who doesn't, and how do we navigate that? And um, it is one of those things at the end of every episode, someone who hasn't been a part of whatever. Um, I think there's an episode where Landry comes in and he has to kick, and the coach calls him Lance, right? Doesn't even know his name.
right.
Send Lance in. And he's like, okay. And I think he makes the kick, but it's just this example. Like, he doesn't even know his name. He's not an important member of the team. And then he does this thing and everybody appreciates him. And there's just so many moments of that, um, of how we connect and how we belong.
Yeah,
So many, I mean, the hero of that show is Tammy Taylor, the coach's wife, who's the guidance counselor, and, you know,
keeping him together,
the pearls
helping
of Tammy
teach.
Taylor wisdom that she just casually drops at the carpool is just gold.
I
Yeah.
know. I have to sometimes remind myself when I hear either one of them. Coach Taylor will drop some quote, and I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, some writers worked on that line of motivation for a long time to get it right.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I feel like we hold ourselves to that as leaders and as people, where like you've got to have the right thing to
Yeah.
say to change someone's. And what I realized is like the more that I can take a breath and just like let learning happen.
Yeah.
Sometimes the most motivational thing I can say is actually a question
Yeah.
to someone that gets them to think about something in a way that I don't even know.
Yeah.
Um,
I think this part about leaders as superheroes is really important. I think when we lionize Martin Luther King as this superhero, which is so deserving in so many ways, we distance ourselves from our ability to contribute to change making.
100%.
When we lionize Mother Teresa or Grace Lee Boggs, one of my big frustrations is how we lionize Rosa Parks as this superhero, as this woman who just got fed up one day and wouldn't leave her seat. That's not what happened. She
Mhm.
was the secretary of the NAACP. They were planning that for 2 years. She didn't just
Mhm.
get fed up one day and do this larger than
I'm
life
tired.
thing.
Yeah.
It was a organized community. People were ready to respond. They chose her for a very particular reason. She was trained. It was organized. And when she didn't leave her seat, she knew exactly what was going to happen. And as soon as that happened, and as soon as she was rested, all these things
They
went into
knew.
place.
Yeah.
And when we just say, she was just fed up and wouldn't put up with it anymore, that's not entirely true, and I think when we turn these change makers into superheroes, it says to normal human beings like you and I, like, "Well, I could never do that." And then we distance ourselves from making changes in our local community or running for school board or, um, we've got students that my girls play basketball with who aren't leaving their homes right now, not going to school, not going to practice because they're afraid of ice. And so we had a conversation last night, like, should we bring them groceries?
Mhm.
Like, that's so easy for us to do. Maybe we do that. Now, am I Rosa Parks? No. Am I Martin Luther King? No. But I might be able to bring that family groceries. And
Mhm.
that might be a little thing that would make a huge difference. And who knows what can come of that. Those big changes start with little changes. So, yes, I'm glad we don't lionize. And yes, TV shows are written by a team of people. The team that wrote Friday Night Lights also wrote the TV show Parenthood, also wrote the TV show This Is Us. So they're good at what
Oh,
they
I didn't
do.
realize any of that.
It's the
I did
same thing.
not know that they would eventually become This Is Us. And actually, This Is Us is a great turn that you and I
Yep.
just didn't plan. My therapist and my wife are like, "You need to watch This Is Us, Chad." And I'm like, "I don't know, man. I heard that like all that show is trying to do is make me cry." And crying is not a thing that I wish to put myself, like, oh, I've got 3 hours free. Like, let's go find something that makes me
Yeah.
really sad tonight. But there's real impact that can be had there. Anyway, I think it's actually a really funny way, because what I'm talking about is the way in which knowing yourself and
Uh-huh.
understanding the why behind it, right? Like,
Yeah.
why don't I want to watch This Is Us?
Yes.
Why don't I want to unlock those feelings and allow myself to cry? Like,
Yeah.
and I always think you have that one part where you're talking and you're like, I know that it would actually probably benefit me to
Yeah.
cry next to my wife and watch this show. Like, I can feel that, and I think about that sometimes. So thanks for entering my
Yes.
bedroom as we watch shows, thinking
But I
about you.
still pretend to not cry when she stops the show and is like, "Are you okay?" I'm
Yeah,
like,
like,
"Ah,
no,
what are
I'm
you
not
you're
crying.
ruining it. You're ruining it. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah," and I blink a lot because I think that will help. Which is interesting because my 15-year-old and my 13-year-old, when they have sleepovers, their friends ask us, "What's a movie that we can cry to?"
What?
And The Notebook is like their
Oh
go-to. "Oh,
gosh.
yeah, watch The Notebook." And they're like, "Yeah, we just wanna get together. We wanna watch this at, like, 1 o'clock in the morning and get to the end and just sob." Like, they want that. They yearn for that. That's not what I was doing when I was a 15-year-old boy in high school is, "What's a
No.
movie we can watch together and cry to?"
Right.
Maybe we would've been healthier if we did.
Yeah. Yeah, that's real. And that shapes us, right? Like,
Yeah.
all of those, like, avoiding it in your teenage years. I had no idea girls were getting together and finding reasons to cry. I don't know. That makes me feel even further behind on this one. But
Yes. Yeah.
but I even see my kids will come home from school, and what they're doing during, like, they get pulled out to do emotional management. They're
Yeah.
they're learning about their feelings almost at the same pace that I'm back here, in my late 30s, like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, like, I'm acknowledging that makes me, and I feel this way, and so that makes me react this way. And my
Yeah.
kids are also learning that at 10. So maybe we're getting better at that somewhat in some places, or at least some school districts are getting better at that.
I think so. I remember, my daughter and a friend fighting, and the parents were here having dinner, and they were fighting, and we sat them down, right? So the 2 kids are sitting there, and there's 4 parents, and we're like, "We're gonna manage this," and they start going, and, "Well, when you did this, it made me feel this way, and when you did this, it made me feel this way," and we were just like, "We're gonna let them do this because 'cause they're using very sophisticated language for their
Yeah.
emotions and feelings, and I probably didn't need to feel that way, but I did, and I think that's because of this." We were just like, "Yeah, we're gonna let them just talk this out,"
Yeah.
because they get social emotional learning, and they talk about green feelings and blue feelings and yellow feelings, and they have all of this
Yes.
language, they have this complex vocabulary, and one of the things I know now as a coach particularly is being able to identify your feelings in your body. That's why we call emotions feelings, is we feel them physically in our chest, in our throat, in our back, wherever. And then being able to name them, and the more specifically we can name them helps us process. So anger is like a big feeling, but there's a lot of variations of anger. There's frustration, there's rage. Um, so what kind of anger are you feeling, right? And the nuance and the complexity of that and the ability to name, I'm not angry, I'm frustrated, is
Yeah.
a way of processing those emotions. And I think processing emotions, uh, feeling them through to completion, right? Feeling them all
Yeah.
the way
That's
through
nearly
before.
impossible
Yeah.
sometimes. Yes, you're
But
right.
if you try it, there's a big difference between I'm feeling angry, I don't want to feel angry, I need to process so I don't feel angry anymore. It doesn't work. But
Yeah.
feeling anger and going, "Oh, I just feel it in my chest. I'm just full of rage. It's just tension. Now it's warm. Now it's moving into my belly. Now I'm just kind of irritated and annoyed. Okay, now it's become this thing." If you just watch it, it will shift. If you try and make it shift, it hangs on,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. And I think that's where I know that's where the conversations and where I talk a little bit more about you is, like, that's where I almost feel like the work that you've done and through our courses, I give you maybe even more credit than you should in
Probably,
therapy.
probably.
Um, but like, what was it? Where was I going with that? Um, it's shaped. Like, you need to understand not just why you're feeling it, but what has happened to you to cause you to react to it in the way. And that's where I changed my life, is like taking it deeper and saying, like, okay, I can feel this. I know these are the physical reactions. First of all, Keith, I had to get back to a place for myself where I had to remember that the feelings in the body, the physical symptoms were the feelings part because I had gotten rid of acknowledging that there were physical symptoms, right? Like I
Yeah.
had tried my best to turn those off. And then so you get back to that, but then more deeply stopping and going like, but where does that tie back to? Like,
Yeah.
why, when I feel not good enough, is that such a trigger for anger for me? Well, because
Yeah.
when I was a kid, if I didn't feel good enough, right?
Yeah.
Like, or when I was a teenager, this and this happened. And sometimes it's just like really hard to remember that you can, in fact, and you can be healthier when you don't just understand what you feel, which is a hard enough step, I think, for most people, men especially. But then on top of that, why do I feel that?
Yeah.
Like, because that's a vulnerable place to go when you start exploring, right? Like, why do you think so many men have a hard time taking it and like going that next step, acknowledging our feelings or going deeper and trying to like heal ourselves?
Well, I think the short version is because society teaches men that the only acceptable emotion they get to feel is anger. Sadness is weakness, frustration is weakness, depression is weakness, hurt is weakness. Anger, though, go for it.
Yeah.
And so most men unconsciously learn to change all of those complex feelings that we feel, just like people of any gender feel, and turn them into anger. And then we want to justify why we're angry. The reason I'm angry is because you blah, 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 blah. It's not because I'm actually super disappointed in myself. It's because I'm angry because you did this and I'm justified, right? And then often our response to anger, because we're generally uncomfortable with anger in
Yeah.
other people, is Chad, why are you so angry? Well, I'm angry because like I want to just like I have these feelings, they're real, they exist. Hi. And so then uh so let's I feel angry. I feel disappointed, but I'm exhibiting anger. You say, I don't understand the anger. I feel delegitimized in my emotions, even though you're
Yes.
kind of right, because what I'm really feeling is this, but I'm explaining this. It doesn't make sense to you. I feel unseen, unheard, unrecognized, unempathized with, and now I need to justify it. So then I say, no, damn it, I'm angry, right? And now I'm more angry, right? And the
Yeah.
disappointment, I don't even remember, right?
Yeah.
And so all of that kind of speeds up. And I think you're right. We got to feel it in our body. We got to be able to name it more precisely, and then recognize what the roots might be. So if you say something and I'm super disappointed, why is that so hard for me? Well, disappointment was something that I couldn't tolerate when I was
Yeah.
a kid.
I
And
didn't know what to
so
do with that.
and I think when
Hmm.
we have that recognition, the thing that I like to say to myself and encourage other people, when we have that recognition that I'm having this response because of this past thing, totally human, normal, don't feel any badness about that. That's just a human thing, is just to say to myself, this is not that.
Yeah.
This is a thing that Chad said. This is not that time I got bullied in high school. That was so
Yeah.
awful. This is a thing that Chad said. This is not that. And often what you can recognize then is I'm having an emotional reaction to that,
Yeah.
not to what Chad just said. And if you can just say, this is not that. I mean, I work with change and leaders all the time. And the reason why we get so flustered with a new organizational chart is because when we were 9, our parents got divorced and we had to move, and that was awful. So it's not about the org chart. It's about the move when we were 9. We lost all our friends.
Yeah.
And so if you can just remind yourself, this is a change at work, this is a change in the org chart. I have these feelings, it's because of that. This is not that. So how can I think about and respond to the org chart change, which may have some feelings, may not, maybe curiosity, maybe interesting, might work out better, who knows? But
Yeah.
this is not that, I think, is a useful tool when we get to that point, as you said, which is really hard to get to, where we're recognizing I'm having a reaction to something else.
Yes.
Superhuman, super normal, don't feel bad. This is not that. Oh,
That's so beautiful.
so how can I respond in this moment and be fully present to Chad and what he just said? And what do I feel about that?
Yeah.
Oh, it's mildly uncomfortable. Okay.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's like it's a giving yourself grace to understand yourself and the patience to like I have to remind myself and tell my own 8-year-old self inside, like, "Hey, I don't actually need you to protect me here." Like, I have and for years, I spent trying to like, "Would you shut up in there? Like, stop." And my therapist allowed me, and honestly, you
Mhm.
allowed me to, like, remember, like, actually, like, that exists for a reason, and you could just, like, calmly tell it, like, "Hey, I got this now," and be patient and have sympathy for that young boy that's trying and cares about you, and instead of treating him like your enemy, treat him like your protector. um, and I
Yeah.
think that's where I lose people, because you start to sound like you're talking about 2 different people, and you're talking about your 8-year-old self, but I
Mm,
think separating those parts, Keith,
yeah.
it's so vital.
Well, there's so much about the many parts inside of us, and I think anybody who gets just a little bit past that knows that, like, the most important conversation you're gonna ever have in your life are the conversations you have with yourself, right? I think this, and on the other hand, I think this. I'm super angry about this. I also think it's kinda silly that I'm angry about this, right?
Yeah.
I think that was super unfair that you did it. I also completely understand where you're coming from. And if we can separate those parts and have conversations and kind of objectify them so we can talk to them and engage with them and see them and recognize that there's a young boy inside that is afraid of being hurt. And then there's a protector who wants to do anything to keep him from possibly being hurt, which means don't go
Yes.
on a podcast and maybe say something dumb that you'll regret.
Mhm.
So don't go on a podcast. Don't do that thing. Don't write a book. Uh, don't adopt kids because you might get it wrong. Play small. You'll be safe. You'll never fear have embarrassment or shame
Never
or
get
feel not
hurt.
good enough.
Mhm.
And if we can just say, I understand you're protecting that 6-year-old boy. I get it. Thank you. And those protectors that we still have helped. They worked. The
Yeah.
protectors that didn't work, we got rid of. They disappeared. It's the ones that really did help and protect us when we were 6 that now show up. And if we can just say, I see you're trying to protect me. Thank you. I don't need that right now. I'm actually going to be 50 in 6 months. I have a PhD. I have a lot of training. I help a lot of other people. I can handle being disappointed. I'll be
Yeah.
okay.
That's
And then that
beautiful.
part usually can just go, oh, I forgot. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll let you be.
Yeah.
And then I can be present with what is here rather than all these parts of me at war, which is, parts work. And there's lots of different ways to do that with, we can get into parts work and protectors and all of that. We can get into handling your inner critic and that voice within you that says you're not good enough and dresses that up with lots of different ways. And handling that so it stops handling you. Uh, Once you can learn to handle that inner critic, it's transformative. And then you start realizing, oh, my boss has one too.
Yeah.
Maybe my boss isn't this imbecile who doesn't make any sense. Maybe she's afraid and scared just like I
Too.
am. That had
And
never
trying to
occurred to
figure
me
out
because we
life.
all think our boss is all powerful and can do whatever they want. And then you
Mhm.
become the boss and you're like, I have no power or
I've
authority.
Yeah,
This
I'm
life.
nothing here. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true. I also realized, like, imposter syndrome might actually exist for everyone up the whole damn chain.
Everyone, everyone. I
Uh,
coach millionaires. I coach college presidents. They all have that inner critic. They all feel not good enough in certain ways. It is a human experience. We have it for different reasons.
mhm.
Some from our childhood, some from hurts and pains, some from systems of oppression in the world that say we're not good enough because of our identities. But we all have it. It tells us different things. It has unique messages, but it's very human. So isn't it interesting to imagine what is Barack Obama's inner critic? What does that say?
Right.
How does he handle it before he gets up and gives a speech in front of a nationally televised audience? And how might I do a similar thing? Because that's a human experience when I have to jump on a podcast that we're going to
Yeah.
record and share with a bunch of people.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Keith, this was wonderful. I think it's very clear to me already. I always feel better. You helped me make sense of all of the jumbled mess in my head. So
Yeah.
thanks for coming on and giving a taste of that to the folks that listen. I really appreciate having you. I would hope maybe in the future we can do this again,
I
because
would love to.
at minimum
We
it's
could do another
therapeutic
2 or
for me.
3 of these. We'd be fine. We
Hey
got plenty
man,
of
I would
material.
love it. So
I think
thank
one of
you
the
so
things
much.
I would just leave with is,
Please.
there's always a gap between who we are and who we aspire to be.
Yes.
And the journey of life is narrowing that gap, and you never close it. Everybody has is who they aspire to be and who they are. And I love the notion of the journey of life is always aspiring, never arriving. And so if you're disappointed that you haven't arrived, just work on the aspiring, just work on the journey, work on closing that gap, work on being better today than yesterday, work on being better this year than last year. Um, that's the journey of life.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything else. Thank you so much.
My
I
pleasure.
appreciate you, and we'll
Yeah.
talk soon.
Thanks,
All right.
Chad.
Thanks, everybody. Bye. Thanks for joining us in the men's room. We hope that our conversations leave you feeling empowered, less alone, and ready to show up as a better husband, father, and friend. The men's room is proudly brought to you by Chad Henderson Coaching, your home for honest support, real life coaching, and a community that gets it. If you're looking for more ways to grow, or if you're curious about how personal coaching can help you step up in life, head over to CoachChadHenderson.com. Until next time, take care of yourself and those around you, and remember, the door is always open here in the men's room.